Imagine the sound. Not the Hollywood pew-pew of a laser, but the real, gut-churning, earth-shattering BRRT of 6.50 caliber machine guns tearing through the sky. It's the sound of a P-47 Thunderbolt, 7 tons of American Fury, diving out of the sun. It's the sound of a Luftwaffe pilot's worst nightmare coming true. But to get to that sound, we have to start with silence. The silence of a broken radio. This is the story of a weapon the Axis laughed at. A plane they called a failure, a beer barrel, a lead sled. They said it was too big, too heavy, too clumsy to ever be a fighter. They said its own pilots were doomed. They were so confident. Until one man, a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and an idea everyone else thought was stupid, performed a simple hack. A fix so absurdly basic, it was like using a paperclip to hotwire a tank. And with that one tweak, that broken radio called in not 1, not 2, but 50 P-47s to turn the sky into a firestorm. This isn't just a story of a battle. It's a story about the arrogance of power, the genius of simplicity, and the moment the underdog stopped playing by the enemy's rules and started writing his own. Stay with me because we're going back to the deserts of North Africa, to the very edge of defeat, to uncover the truth behind one of the most devastating and most underestimated weapons of World War II. The year is 1943. The place, a dusty, sun-scorched patch of hell known as the Mediterranean Theater. For the Allies, things are complicated. We've kicked the Germans out of North Africa, sure. Operation Torch was a success. But now we're hitting the underbelly of Fortress Europe, and it's proving to be made of solid steel. Sicily, Italy, every island is a bloody price paid in foot-by-foot, mountain-by-mountain fighting. And in the air, the Luftwaffe is still a deadly, vicious force. They have the experience. They have the aces, men like Hans-Wilhelm Marseille, the Star of Africa, who carved up the skies over the desert with almost supernatural skill. And they have the machines. The Messerschmitt Bf 109, especially the new G model, the Gustav, is a thoroughbred. It's sleek, it's fast, it climbs like a homesick angel. In a turning, twisting, low-altitude dogfight, it's a surgeon's scalpel. Then there's our new wonder weapon, the one that's supposed to turn the tide, the P-47 Thunderbolt. And when it first arrives on the scene, the reaction is underwhelming. To put it mildly, picture this, a brand new P-47 pilot, let's call him Lieutenant Joe Williams, fresh from the States, climbs out of his cockpit in Tunisia. He's proud. He's flying this massive, brand new fighter. And a grizzled old P-40 Warhawk pilot, covered in dust and oil, squints at the jug, spits some tobacco and says, "Son, did they send us a new bomber?" Because the Thunderbolt was huge. It weighed over 7 tons fully loaded. It had a massive, barrel-shaped fuselage. That's where the nicknames Jug and Beer Barrel came from. It was built around the most powerful piston engine ever put in a fighter at the time, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, an absolute beast of a power plant. But all that power came with a turbo supercharger, a complex system of ducts and pipes that made the plane look pregnant. It was the opposite of the sleek, elegant Spitfire or the 109. It was a flying brick. And the Luftwaffe loved it. They thought it was a joke. German intelligence reports initially dismissed it. One captured German pilot reportedly said, "We laughed when we saw it. We thought you could just give it a push and it would fall over." They saw its initial performance down low, its sluggish climb rate, and they wrote it off. They underestimated the very core of American philosophy. We don't always build the most elegant thing, but we build the toughest, most powerful, and most effective thing you've ever seen. We build a sledgehammer when everyone else is using rapiers. And the sledgehammer was about to swing. But first, it had to learn how to hit its target. And that's where our story truly begins, not with a general's order, but with a frustrated mechanic in a dusty, wind-blown field, staring at a radio that wouldn't work. So, our boys in the 325th Fighter Group, the Checkertail Clan, are flying their jugs. They're tasked with escorting bombers, hitting ground targets, and trying to gain air superiority over Italy. And they're running into a huge technological problem. A problem that has nothing to do with guns or engines. The P-47, for all its power, was a gas guzzler. Its internal fuel tank wasn't enough to get it from its bases in Sicily to prime targets in Germany or even northern Italy and back. The solution? Drop tanks. External fuel tanks that you could jettison when empty. Simple, right? Wrong. Because the early models of the P-47 had a critical flaw. A flaw that wasn't in the airframe, but in the communication system. The SE-522 radio. This radio was supposed to be the pilot's lifeline. It was for talking to wingmen, to the group leader, to ground control. And crucially, for a new, devastating tactic the Americans were developing, fighter-bomber coordination. The idea was to have a forward air controller, a pathfinder, on the ground, talking the flights of jugs onto their targets. Hey, jug flight, I see the flak. They're hiding in the valley to your east. Come down to Angels 5 and you'll see the convoy. But the SE-522 had a nasty habit of just quitting. It would work fine on the ground. But as soon as the pilot took off, climbed to altitude, and switched from the internal fuel tank to the external drop tank, the radio would die. Static. Silence. Think about that for a second. You're a young pilot, 20 years old, flying over enemy territory. You're nervous. The flak is starting to pop around you, little black clouds of death. You need to hear your leader's voice. You need to be told where to go, what to do. You switch your fuel tank, and your world goes silent. You are alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. You can't hear orders. You can't call for help. You can't even warn your wingman about the two 109s diving on him from out of the sun. It was a morale killer. It was a death sentence. Missions were being compromised. Pilots were getting lost, having to abort, or worse, flying blind into heavily defended areas because they couldn't receive the warning. The top brass was furious. They blamed the pilots. You're not operating the equipment correctly. The pilots blamed the mechanics. You're not fixing the radios. The mechanics, guys like our hero, a sergeant named Kenneth C. Ken Dahlberg, were tearing their hair out. They checked the sets. They'd test the wiring. On the ground, everything was perfect. The radios worked flawlessly. But in the air? Silence. It was a ghost in the machine. An invisible gremlin that was crippling one of the most powerful weapons in the Allied arsenal. And the Germans, if they knew, would have laughed even harder. Not only was the plane a cow, its pilots were deaf and dumb. Ken Dahlberg wasn't a high-ranking officer. He was a master sergeant, a technical wizard who understood radios better than he understood people. He'd been tinkering with electronics since he was a kid. And he was frustrated. He knew the radios were good. So what was happening up there in the sky that was killing them? He started to think. It wasn't random. It happened specifically when they switched fuel tanks. What was different about the fuel tanks? It wasn't the fuel itself. Then it hit him. Electricity. You see, an aircraft's electrical system, especially in those days, needs a ground. A return path for the current. The massive airframe of the P-47 itself usually acted as that ground. But Dahlberg had a theory. A crazy, simple theory. What if, when they switched from the internal tank to the external drop tank, they were breaking that ground? The internal tank was hardwired into the plane's electrical system. But the drop tank was just plumbed in. It was attached to the wing with metal hooks. But what if that connection wasn't electrically sound? What if it was insulated by paint or rubber seals? The fuel lines themselves were rubber, non-conductive. In that moment, the entire problem crystallized. When the pilot switched tanks, the electrical ground for the entire radio system was being interrupted. The current had nowhere to go. The radio, for a split second, was essentially floating, ungrounded. And that was enough to fry a sensitive tube or disrupt the circuit. It wasn't a complicated failure. It was a stupid, simple, mechanical one. So, he went to his commanding officer. "Sir, I think I figured it out. It's a grounding issue with the drop tank pylons." The CO, probably stressed and dealing with 100 other problems, likely shrugged. "Fine, Dahlberg, whatever. Fix it." But how? The official fix would require a redesign from Republic Aviation, the manufacturer. That would take months. They didn't have months. They had missions tomorrow. So, Ken Dahlberg did what any good American tinkerer would do. He MacGyvered it. He went and found some spare copper wire. Not fancy, mil-spec wire. Just plain old copper wire. He took it over to a P-47. He scraped away a little patch of paint on the wing pylon, right down to the bare metal. He attached one end of the wire there. Then, he scraped a spot on the metal of the drop tank itself. He attached the other end of the wire there. He created a jumper cable. A simple, electrical bridge between the plane and the drop tank. It cost pennies. It took minutes. He told the pilot, "Go up. Switch tanks. Tell me if your radio works." The pilot was skeptical. This little piece of wire is going to fix what a team of engineers couldn't? But he went up. He climbed to 10,000 feet. His heart pounding, he reached down and switched the fuel selector from internal to external. He held his breath, waiting for the silence. And then, crystal clear, came the voice of the ground controller. "Jug flight, this is checker base, radio check, over." It worked. It actually worked. The pilot came back down ecstatic. "Dahlberg, you genius. It works." Word spread through the group. Soon, every plane was getting the Dahlberg fix. A little piece of copper wire, bridging the gap between failure and success. The mechanics laughed at first. That's it? A wire? But they stopped laughing when the mission success rates started to climb. The radios worked. Now, the pathfinders on the ground could talk to the pilots. Now, the intricate dance of death, the calling in of airstrikes, could begin. The Thunderbolt finally had its voice. But having a voice is one thing. Knowing what to scream is another. And the Luftwaffe, basking in their own superiority, were about to get a very loud, very shocking wake-up call. A call that would come not from one plane, but from 50. Because now that the Jugs could hear, they were ready to answer. And their answer was going to be the roar of 400.50 caliber machine guns, all firing at once. So the fix was in. The Thunderbolts could talk. But what do you say when you finally have the microphone? How do you use that voice to orchestrate utter chaos for the enemy? The answer was being devised by a group of brilliant, ruthless tacticians who looked at the Jug not as a failure, but as the ultimate predator. They were about to rewrite the rulebook of aerial combat, and the first chapter would be written in fire over a place called the Ploesti oil fields. But that's a story for the next part. Because when those 50 P-47s heard the call and dove, they weren't just dropping bombs. They were delivering a message to the Axis. The laughing stops now. So the radios worked. A piece of wire, a mechanic's stubbornness, and suddenly the sky was full of voices. But let me ask you a question. You've got this new power. This ability to talk, to coordinate, to strike with precision. What's the first thing you do with it? Do you go after a single train? A lone gun emplacement? You think bigger. You think meaner. You find the one thing the enemy values most, the one thing he believes is untouchable, and you show him he's wrong. You find his heart, and you hold a knife to it. For the Nazi war machine, that heart wasn't a city. It wasn't a factory. It was blood. Black, liquid blood. And in the spring of 1944, the greatest concentration of that oil in all of Europe was in Romania, at a place called Ploesti. A sprawling, monstrous complex of refineries and cracking towers that Hitler himself called the source of our strength. It was defended by the most concentrated, vicious anti-aircraft network in the world, the Flak Hell. And it was about to meet the newly empowered, newly vocal P-47 Thunderbolt. This is the story of how a failed fighter became the most feared guardian in the sky, and how one radio call could unleash an avalanche of fire. With the radio problem solved, the P-47 squadrons, like the 325th Checkertails and the 332nd Red Tails, were unleashed. But the generals back in Washington and the tacticians in the field were realizing something. The original doctrine for the Jug was wrong. Sending it down low to turn and burn with BF-109s was like asking a heavyweight boxer to win a ballet. You were fighting the enemy's fight on his terms. But what if you changed the terms? What if you used the Jug's real strengths, its devastating dive speed, its incredible durability, its massive payload, and created a whole new way of fighting? Enter the concept of the fighter bomber, the J-bows, as the Germans called them. And with the radios fixed, a terrifying new tactic emerged, the armed reconnaissance sweep, or the hunter-killer team. Here's how it worked. You'd send out a flight of P-47s, 4 or 8 planes, roaming deep behind enemy lines. They're not just looking for a fight, they're looking for targets of opportunity. A train, a convoy, a bridge, a command post. And on the ground, sometimes miles behind enemy lines, you have a pathfinder. A brave soul, often an OSS operative or a specially trained air controller, hiding in a cellar or up on a ridge with a radio. The radio, the one that now worked. He's the hunter. He spots the target. The jugs are the killers. Picture the scene from the Pathfinder's perspective. Let's call him Captain John Jack Turner. He's crouched in a bombed-out farmhouse overlooking a vital railway line in northern Italy. It's dawn. The air is cold. He's been hiding for 2 days, eating cold rations, watching. He sees it. A German ammunition train, camouflaged, slowly chugging its way towards the front. This is it. He pulls out his SER 522 hand crank radio. His hands are shaking, but not from the cold. He keys the mic, his voice a low, steady whisper. Hammer base, this is Shadow 1. Do you read? Over. A crackle of static, then a clear, calm voice from the sky, 20,000 feet above him. Shadow 1, Hammer base. We read you 5 by 5. Go ahead. A wave of relief. That connection, that simple "we read you," was everything. It was the link between the man in the dirt and the angels of death in the sky. Hammer base, I have a priority target. Ammo train, 12 cars. Locomotive is a Class 52. Grid reference Charlie Papa 79er. It's moving east, about 10 clicks from the Treviso junction. Heavy flak positions on the flat cars, fore and aft. You copy? Copy all, Shadow 1. Ammo train, Grid Charlie Papa 79er. We are inbound. Stand by. High above, the flight leader of the 4 P-47s, Lieutenant Mike Moose Ferrara, nods to his wingman. Okay boys, we're on. Shadows found us a present. Let's go unwrap it. They push their control sticks forward. The Thunderbolts tip over into a dive. This is what they were built for. They don't just descend, they fall out of the sky. The massive double Wasp engine screams, the turbo supercharger whines, keeping the power up in the thin air. The airspeed needle winds past 400, 450, 500 miles per hour. The whole airframe shudders. You're not flying the plane anymore, you're aiming it. It's a bullet. A 7-ton bullet. Down below, Jack Turner watches, holding his breath. He sees the 4 specks become arrows, then sharks, diving out of the sun. The Germans on the train don't see them until it's too late. The first warning is the sound, a high-pitched, tearing scream that builds into a deafening roar. Moose Ferrara picks the locomotive. He waits, his thumb on the trigger. The pipper of his gun sight settles on the engine's boiler. 700 yards. 600. 500. The flak gunners on the flat cars start to fire, their tracers arcing up lazily, then whipping past the canopy in a frenzy. Steady, steady, he mutters to himself. At 400 yards, he squeezes the trigger. BRRT. It's not a burst, it's a torrent. A solid stream of lead. 6.50 caliber machine guns, each firing 800 rounds a minute. The combined firepower is staggering. The tracers, every 5th round is a glowing red streak, walk right into the locomotive. It doesn't just get hit, it disintegrates. Steel panels peel back. The boiler explodes in a geyser of superheated steam and shredded metal. The train, robbed of its power, lurches and grinds to a violent halt. The other 3 jugs are right behind him. One goes for the flat cars, silencing the guns in a storm of sparks and secondary explosions. The other 2 walk their fire down the length of the ammunition cars. It's a chain reaction. One car explodes, then the next, a cataclysm of fire and sound that rips the train in half. The concussion wave hits Jack Turner's hiding place a few seconds later, rattling the stones and dusting him with debris. The whole attack has taken less than 30 seconds. Moose pulls back on the stick, the G-forces pushing him down into his seat, his vision graying at the edges. He climbs, looking back at the inferno below. A pillar of black smoke already reaching thousands of feet into the sky. Shadow 1, hammer base. Target destroyed. Good hunting. Jack Turner keys his mic, a grin spreading across his grimy face. Roger that, hammer base. Beautiful work. The road to Florence just got a little quieter. Shadow 1 out. This was the new war. Not anonymous bombing from 30,000 feet, but intimate, precise, and brutally personal. And it was all possible because a mechanic named Dahlberg ran a wire from a pylon to a gas tank. But this hunter-killer tactic reached its bloody, spectacular apex on a single, clear Sunday in the spring of 1944. April 18th, Palm Sunday. The location, the shuttle route between Italy and the German front lines in the Balkans. Intelligence, partly from ultra-code breaking, had revealed that the Luftwaffe was conducting a massive air transport operation. They were ferrying reinforcements, fuel, and supplies from Greece and the Balkans back to the hard-pressed front in Italy. And they were using a fleet of Junkers Ju-52 transports, slow, lumbering, three-engine planes nicknamed Iron Annies. They were the workhorses of the Luftwaffe, but in the air, they were sitting ducks. The 325th Fighter Group got the tip. It was a perfect storm. The weather was clear. The intelligence was golden. And the P-47s, equipped with brand new, jettisonable 150-gallon drop tanks, thanks to the now universal Dahlberg fix, had the range to intercept the formation deep over the Adriatic Sea. The stage was set for an ambush of biblical proportions. Imagine the scene from the German perspective. Dozens of Ju-52s, flying in a massive, V-shaped formation, droning steadily across the blue Adriatic. They feel safe. They're over water. They have a fighter escort, a squadron of Bf-109s, buzzing around them like nervous sheepdogs. It's a routine shuttle run. Some of the German transport pilots are probably thinking about lunch. Then, from high above, a radio crackles to life in the cockpits of 50 waiting P-47 Thunderbolts. All checkertail aircraft, this is lead. Bandits sighted. Large formation of Ju-52s, Angels 10, with 109 escort. Drop tanks, let's go to work. 50 heavy, empty fuel tanks are released, tumbling away towards the sea. And then the dive. It wasn't just a flight of fighters attacking. It was an avalanche. 50 Thunderbolts, their engines screaming in a full-power dive, fell upon the German formation. The sky, moments before serene, was suddenly filled with the terrifying shapes of the jugs, their 8.50 calibers already starting to sparkle with fire. The German fighter escort was overwhelmed. They were outnumbered, and the P-47s, diving from a position of supreme advantage, were moving too fast to catch. A 109 pilot would try to turn into an attacking jug, but the Thunderbolt would simply blow past him, its dive speed making it untouchable, and then he'd have 3 more on his tail. The slaughter of the transports was methodical. It wasn't a dogfight, it was a turkey shoot. The Ju-52s were built of corrugated metal and canvas. They had no armor. Their defensive machine guns were like pea shooters against the storm of .50 caliber rounds. A P-47 pilot would line up on a transport, fire a 1-second burst, and the Ju-52 would simply come apart. Wings folded, engines tore loose, fuel tanks erupted. The sea below began to litter with wreckage and the white dots of parachutes. But for many, there was no time to bail out. One pilot from the 325th, Lieutenant Bob Basiler, later described it. They were so slow, it was almost like shooting a stationary target. You'd see your tracers walk right up the fuselage and then the whole thing would just dissolve into a ball of fire. It was horrible. It was easy. Another pilot, overcome by the sheer scale of the destruction, simply stopped firing and flew through the formation, watching in a kind of stunned horror as his squadron mates systematically dismantled the entire air armada. The radio chatter was a chaotic mix of the clinical and the frantic. Tally-ho, 1 o'clock low. I'm on the leader. 109 on your tail, blue 2, brake left. Brake left. He's burning. He's going down. Good kill, good kill. There's too many, just pick one. In less than 15 minutes, it was over. The sky was empty of enemy aircraft. The sea was on fire with burning fuel and floating debris. The confirmed kill count was staggering. The 325th alone was credited with over 50 confirmed aerial victories that day, the vast majority being transports. It was one of the most one-sided aerial victories of the entire war. They called it the Palm Sunday Massacre. The Luftwaffe was gutted. An entire air transport fleet, vital for supplying their forces, was wiped out in a single engagement. The psychological blow was even greater. The myth of the P-47's inferiority was dead, shot down and left burning on the waters of the Adriatic. The Germans stopped laughing. They started fearing. When they saw the checker-tailed jugs in the sky, they knew what was coming. The broken radio hack, the piece of copper wire, had just called in not just 50 P-47s, but a verdict. It had orchestrated a massacre that proved American ingenuity, when paired with American courage, could rewrite the rules of the air war in a single, bloody afternoon. The Palm Sunday Massacre was the Thunderbolts' brutal, undeniable coming-out party. It was no longer the plane the Axis mocked. It was the plane they dreaded. But the story of the Jug's transformation isn't over. Because the very thing that made it a terror in the sky, its raw, brutal power, was about to be turned towards the Earth itself, in a campaign of destruction so thorough, it would strangle the German war machine on the ground. The P-47 was about to become the deadliest tank killer of the war. And it would do it with a weapon so simple, so low-tech, it would make a copper wire look complicated. We're talking about a piece of lead pipe. The story of the bazooka-equipped Jug is next. The Palm Sunday Massacre sent a shockwave through the Luftwaffe. The Jug was a demon in the air, a predator that could shred their transports and hold its own against their best fighters. But what if I told you that its most devastating role wasn't in the sky at all? What if its true calling was hunting on the ground, stalking the most fearsome land weapon of the war? I'm talking about the Panzer. The German tank, a symbol of blitzkrieg, of invincibility, rolling across Europe. The Allies were desperate for a way to stop them. They tried bombs, they tried big guns. But the ultimate tank killer, the thing that would send Tiger and Panther crews scrambling for their lives, turned out to be a 30-pound rocket fired from a modified P-47. This is the story of how the Thunderbolt became the angel of death for an entire Panzer division, and how a weapon born from a bazooka and a crazy idea created a new kind of battlefield terror. It's the summer of 1944. The Allies are bogged down in Normandy. The hedgerows of the Bocage country are a nightmare. Every field, every lane, is a potential ambush point for German armor. A single, well-hidden Panther or Tiger tank could hold up an entire American infantry division for hours, picking off our Sherman tanks like tin cans. Our boys were calling their Shermans Ronsons because they lit up first time, every time. The casualty lists were getting longer every day. We had to find a way to break the stalemate. We had to find a way to kill tanks from the air. The standard methods weren't cutting it. Strafe a tank with .50 calibers? You just make the crew angry. The armor was too thick. Dive bombing was incredibly risky and inaccurate. A pilot had to dive almost vertically through a hailstorm of light flak to drop a 500-pound bomb, and even then, a direct hit was a matter of pure luck. We needed something new. Something that could punch through the thick, sloped armor of a German tank from a safer distance. The answer was already in the hands of our infantry. The M1 bazooka. A simple tube that fired a 2.36-inch shaped charge rocket. It wasn't perfect, but in the hands of a brave soldier, he could creep up on a tank and, if he hit the right spot, disable it. The shaped charge was the key. It didn't rely on kinetic energy. It focused a jet of superheated gas and molten metal that could burn through inches of steel. It was a game changer on the ground. And then some bright engineer at Republic Aviation, probably staring at a bazooka and a P-47 blueprint at the same time, had a what-if moment. A moment of sheer, beautiful, crazy American ingenuity. What if we took the bazooka rocket and put it on a plane? Not one, not two, but 10 of them. 5 under each wing of a Thunderbolt. The idea was so simple it was brilliant. The P-47 was the only fighter sturdy enough, with the hardpoint strong enough, to carry such a load and handle the stress of firing them. They designed simple launch rails, little more than metal tubes, and called them bazooka matrices. They were essentially just holding the rockets in place. There were no fancy guidance systems. No computers. You aimed the whole plane. They called the new configuration the tank buster. And when the first prototypes were shown to pilots, the reaction was a mix of skepticism and awe. It looked ridiculous. The rockets, with their bulbous warheads, stuck out from the wings like a bunch of lead pipes. It was the ultimate jury-rigged weapon. But the potential was terrifying. The tactic developed was as straightforward as the weapon itself. A flight of tankbuster jugs would patrol over the front lines, their eyes glued to the ground, looking for the telltale signs of armor. Dust clouds, the long barrel of a tank gun, the distinctive shape of a German panzer hiding in a hedgerow or a tree line. When they found a target, they didn't dive. They came in low, nap of earth, skimming the treetops, using the terrain for cover. They'd pop up over a ridge, spot the tank, and in a matter of seconds, they had to line up the shot. Imagine you're the pilot, Lieutenant Frank Killer Kilroy. You're flying so low you can see the shocked faces of German infantry as you roar past. Your heart is pounding. You see it, a Mark IV Panzer, partially hidden under a tree, its engine running. You have seconds. Steady, steady. You mutter to yourself. You're not diving. You're in a shallow glide. You flick the safety cover off the rocket arming switch. The tank grows in your windscreen. You can see the detail on the camouflage now. At about 800 yards, you pick up the nose of the jug just slightly, putting the tank in your gun sight. You don't need a complex calculation. It's instinct. It's like leading a duck in flight, but the duck is a 25-ton steel monster. You squeeze the trigger on your control stick. Not the gun trigger, the rocket trigger. Push, push, push. The launch is violent. The plane shudders as the rockets leave the rails, one after another, leaving trails of white smoke. They don't fire all at once. They ripple. 10 rockets, streaking towards the tank in the span of 3 seconds. The sound is a series of deep, throaty humps. From the ground, the perspective is pure terror. The tank crew hears the roar of the aircraft engine. The commander pops his head out of the hatch, looks up, and sees a P-47, impossibly low, and then he sees the smoke trails. 10 of them coming right at him. There's no time to react. No time to run. The shaped charge warheads hit. They don't need a direct impact on the armor. The shaped charge does its work. There's a series of loud circus. Then, silence for a half second. And then, the jackpot effect. If a rocket hit the engine deck or the thinner top armor, it would penetrate. The superheated jet would ignite the fuel, the ammunition. The tank wouldn't just blow up, it would erupt. The turret, weighing tons, would be blown clean off its ring, spinning through the air like a flipped coin. It was a signature kill, the ultimate confirmation. The pilots called it popping the cork. Frank Kilroy pulls back on the stick, climbing away from the fireball, his wingman right behind him covering his tail. He keys his mic, checker 4, tank destroyed. Turret off. Good kill. It was brutal, intimate, and devastatingly effective. A single P-47 tankbuster could wipe out an entire platoon of tanks in one pass. The psychological impact on German tank crews was immense. They were no longer the hunters, they were the hunted. The sky, which had once been the domain of the Stuka, now belonged to the Jug. They started calling the P-47s J-bows, short for Jag Bomber, but they said it with a tone of dread. But the tankbuster's finest hour, its moment of apocalyptic glory, came in August of 1944, in a place called the Falaise Gap. The Allied breakout from Normandy was in full swing. We had the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army nearly surrounded in a pocket near the town of Falaise. It was a trap. The only way out for over 100,000 German soldiers, with thousands of vehicles, tanks, and horses, was through a single, narrow corridor. It was a bottleneck of sheer desperation. The order came down to the 9th Air Force P-47 groups. Seal the pocket. Make that corridor a graveyard. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. A systematic, relentless destruction of an entire army on the move. The P-47s, both as pure fighter bombers with bombs and as dedicated tank busters with rockets, operated over the Falaise Gap in shifts. There was no break for the Germans. From dawn to dusk, the sky was filled with the constant drone of Thunderbolt engines. It was an assembly line of death. Pilots would take off, fly to the pocket, expend their ordnance on the endless column of targets below, return to base, rearm, refuel, and go back. They did this 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a day. The ground crews worked in a frenzy, loading bombs, fitting rockets, filling fuel tanks, all while the pilots snatched a quick sandwich and a cup of coffee before heading back into the hell they were creating. The scene on the ground was described by those who witnessed it as something out of Dante's Inferno. The narrow roads were choked with burning vehicles, tanks, half-tracks, trucks, horse-drawn wagons. The air was thick with the smell of burning fuel, cordite, and death. The constant explosions from bombs and rockets mixed with the screams of men and animals. A P-47 pilot, Captain James Goodson, later recalled the sheer scale of it. You didn't have to aim. You just flew down the road and dropped your bombs or fired your rockets into the congestion. It was horrible. You could see men running, scattering into the fields. But there was nowhere for them to go. We were turning the entire area into a wasteland. The tank busters were in their element. They'd come in low, below the haze of smoke, and pick off the panzers trying to lead the breakout. A Tiger tank, a fearsome beast that could destroy a Sherman from a mile away, was utterly helpless against a P-47 diving out of the sun with 10 high-explosive rockets. The pilots developed a cold, efficient terminology. Flamer, for a vehicle burning. Cripple, for one stopped and smoking. Jackpot, for a tank with its turret blown off. The radio chatter was a monotone litany of destruction. Checker lead, column of half-tracks, grid Mike November 4-2. Roger, engaging. Good hits. Multiple flamers. Tiger tank, 10 o'clock, hiding in the orchard. I see him. Rippling rockets. Now. Jackpot, jackpot, turret is off. The German army in Normandy was annihilated in the Falaise pocket. Over 10,000 were killed, and 50,000 were taken prisoner. The landscape was littered with the wreckage of over 500 tanks and assault guns, and thousands of other vehicles. It was a killing blow from which the German army in the West would never truly recover. And at the heart of that destruction was the P-47 Thunderbolt. The plane they had laughed at. The plane that was too big, too heavy. That plane, armed with a mechanic's radio fix and an infantryman's rocket, had become the most effective tactical weapon of the entire European war. It didn't just win air superiority, it won the ground war. It broke the back of the panzer divisions. The Falaise Gap was the Thunderbolt's brutal masterpiece, a symphony of destruction composed with bombs, rockets, and .50 caliber fire. It had proven itself beyond any doubt. But the story of the Jug and the men who flew it doesn't end with the liberation of Europe. Because as the war ground on, a new, even more terrifying threat emerged in the skies over Germany. A threat that was faster than anything the Allies had, that could climb out of reach, that made our bombers vulnerable again. A jet, the Messerschmitt Me 262 Schwalbe. And in the final, desperate days of the war, the heavy, obsolete P-47 would be called upon for one last, impossible mission, to hunt and kill the future. The final showdown between the piston-engine titan and the jet-powered wonder is where our story concludes. The Falaise pocket proved the P-47 was the king of the battlefield. It had crushed armies. But the war wasn't over. And just when the Allies thought they had mastered the skies, the Germans unveiled a weapon that seemed to leap a generation ahead. A ghost. A shark. A plane with no propellers. The Messerschmitt Me 262 Schwalbe. The Swallow, the world's first operational jet fighter. It was 100 miles per hour faster than anything we had. It could climb away from our best props like they were standing still. Its cannons could shred a B-17 in a single pass. Our bomber crews, veterans of 100 missions, were terrified. They called it the Stormbird. For a moment, it looked like this one technological marvel could undo all our hard-won gains. But the P-47 wasn't done yet. Its final and perhaps most unlikely role was about to begin. This is the story of how the lumbering Jug, the plane built for another era, was tasked with hunting down and killing the future. It's late 1944. The Allies are pushing towards the German border. The Luftwaffe is on its back foot, its experienced pilots dead, its fuel reserves critically low. But desperation is the mother of invention, and the Nazis were nothing if not desperate. They threw their last, best hope into the sky, the Me-262. Imagine your AB-17 pilot flying in a tight formation at 25,000 feet. You've seen flak, you've fought off FW-190s and BF-109s. You know the drill. Then, your tail gunner's voice crackles over the intercom, high-pitched with a fear you've never heard before. Bandits. 8 o'clock high. Jesus, they're fast. I've never seen anything so fast. You see them. Not the familiar silhouettes of German props. These are different. Sleek, needle-nosed, with swept wings and no propellers. And they are moving. They slash through your formation like wolves through a flock of sheep. They don't turn, they don't dogfight. They make one high-speed pass, their 430mm cannons firing shells the size of beer bottles. AB-17 hit by that fire doesn't just get damaged, it disintegrates. Then the 262s are gone, already specks on the horizon, climbing away before your P-51 Mustang escorts can even react. That was the shock of the Me-262. It changed the rules. Our top fighters, the P-51 Mustang and the P-38 Lightning, were brilliant, beautiful planes. But against the 262 in a straight-up chase? They were obsolete. A Mustang pilot would push his Merlin engine to the red line, watch his airspeed indicator kiss 440 miles per hour, and still watch the jet pull away from him as if he were parked. It was demoralizing. It was a glimpse of a terrifying new kind of warfare. The generals panicked. How do you stop a plane you can't catch? They tried everything. They put bombers on the jet's known flight paths. They sent Mustangs to patrol higher. Nothing worked. The 262 held all the cards, speed, and the initiative. But then, some forgotten tactician, maybe a former tankbuster pilot, looked at the problem differently. He looked past the 262's blazing speed and saw its weaknesses. And he looked at the P-47, the workhorse, the sledgehammer, and saw a solution. The 262 was vulnerable in 3 places: on the ground, during its takeoff and landing, and in a turn. Its jet engines were temperamental, slow to spool up, and it guzzled fuel. It couldn't loiter. It had to hit and run. And its high landing speed and poor acceleration at low speeds made it a sitting duck on its final approach. So, a new, incredibly dangerous mission profile was born. It wasn't given a fancy name. The pilots just called it what it was: the Rat Patrol. The job? Stalk the jets in their own den. The P-47 was the only plane for the job. Because unlike the more delicate Mustang, the Jug could take a phenomenal amount of punishment. This mission meant flying deep into Germany, at low level, through the thickest flak defenses in the world, to ambush the 262s where they were most vulnerable, their airfields. The plan was audacious. Flights of P-47s, often just 4 planes, would slip across the front lines at treetop height. They'd navigate using rivers and rail lines, avoiding known flak positions, their engines a low roar as they streaked over the German countryside. Their target, the jet bases, like the famous one at Lechfeld. The tension on these missions was unbearable. You're flying so low that you're reading the road signs. You see German soldiers on the ground looking up in surprise. Every church steeple, every factory chimney, could be hiding a 20mm flak gun. You're sweating, your knuckles are white on the stick, your head is on a swivel. You're not just a pilot, you're a commando in a 7-ton fighter plane. You get to the target area. You pop up over a ridge, and there it is, the airfield. Concrete runways, hangars, and your heart skips a beat. There they are. 2, 3, 4 Me-262s. They're either lined up, preparing for takeoff, or the ultimate prize, they're on their final approach, landing gear down, slowing down, utterly exposed. This was the moment. The trap was sprung. The Jugs would pour on the power and dive towards the airfield. The element of surprise was everything. The German flak gunners would be caught off guard. The 262s on the ground were helpless. A pilot trying to take off was at his most vulnerable, slow, heavy with fuel, committed to the runway. Let's put you in the cockpit one last time. You're Captain Joe, Earthquake, Enos, leading a rat patrol flight of the 56th Fighter Group. You've just popped up over the trees and see Lechfeld spread out before you. And you see it, a 262, its distinctive shape, rolling down the runway for takeoff. It's your chance. Bogey on the runway. He's rolling. I'm on him. You yell into the radio. You push the throttle all the way forward. The double wasp thunders. You're not diving from altitude, you're in a shallow sprint, racing to cut him off before he can get his speed up. The flak starts to come up now, dirty black puffs and streams of tracers. You ignore it. You have one goal. The 262 pilot sees you. He knows he's in trouble. He's desperately trying to get his speed up, his engines screaming, but they're slow to respond. You have the advantage of instant power. You close the distance in seconds. You don't wait for a perfect shot. You can't. At 800 yards, you open up with all 8 guns. A long, sustained burst. Your tracers walk across the concrete, kicking up sparks, and then they find their mark. They stitch a line of destruction right into the 262's fuselage and wing root. There's a flash, then a massive fireball as the jet fuel ignites. The 262, this technological marvel, is consumed in an orange and black explosion before it ever leaves the ground. It skids off the runway, a burning wreck. Scratch one jet, your wingman calls out. But the fight isn't over. Another 262 is on final approach, its gear down, its pilot probably focused on his landing check. He doesn't see you turning into him. He's a sitting duck. You pull your nose through the turn, lead him just slightly, and fire another burst. The .50 caliber rounds tear into the thin skin of the jet. It doesn't explode, but it's crippled. It slews to the side, crashes onto the grass beside the runway, and breaks apart. In less than a minute, your flight has destroyed 2 of the Luftwaffe's most advanced weapons. You don't stay to fight. The flak is getting too intense. Checkertails, let's get the hell out of here. Go low. You push the stick forward and dive back down to the treetops, the flak bursting harmlessly above you as you escape. These rat patrol missions were some of the most dangerous of the war, but they were devastatingly effective. While the Me-262s racked up an impressive kill ratio in the air, a huge number of them were destroyed on the ground by these low-level P-47 sweeps. The Jug, the plane deemed too slow to catch the jet, had found a way to kill it. It didn't beat the 262 in a race, it outsmarted it. It proved that tactics, courage, and a willingness to get down in the dirt and fight could overcome even the most terrifying technological advantage. The war in Europe ended. The P-47 Thunderbolt had flown over 500,000 missions. It had claimed over 3,800 enemy aircraft in the air and destroyed thousands more on the ground, along with tens of thousands of trucks, locomotives, and armored vehicles. It ended the war with the lowest loss rate of any American fighter. The plane they laughed at had become the most successful fighter bomber of World War II. But the story of the Jug is more than a list of statistics. It's a story about a philosophy. The American philosophy. We didn't build the P-47 to be the most elegant plane. We built it to be the toughest, the most powerful, the most resilient. We built it to win. It's the story of men like Ken Dahlberg, the mechanic whose simple piece of wire unlocked the plane's potential. It's the story of pilots who took a plane they didn't understand and learned to master it, to bend it to their will, to turn its perceived weaknesses into overwhelming strengths. They didn't complain that the 109 could turn better. They used the Jug's dive to hit and run. They didn't moan that it was heavy. They used that weight to carry more bombs and rockets than any other fighter. They took a sledgehammer and used it to perform brain surgery. The P-47's journey is a timeless lesson. It's a lesson about the danger of underestimation. The Axis saw the surface, the big, barrel-shaped fuselage, and they dismissed it. They failed to see the power within, the ruggedness, the capacity for adaptation. They failed to see the ingenuity of the men who maintained it and the courage of the men who flew it. And for us today, it asks a powerful question. What's the P-47 in your life? What's that thing that people are mocking, that they're writing off as too big, too clumsy, too old, too broken? What's that idea that seems too simple to ever work? The story of the jug tells us to look deeper, to see the potential that others miss, to have the courage to run that wire, to strap on those rockets, to fly that low-level mission. It teaches us that grit, ingenuity, and a refusal to quit can turn any broken tool into a weapon of destiny. The Thunderbolt's legacy isn't just in museums or history books. It's in that spirit. The spirit that looks at a challenge, no matter how impossible it seems, and says, "We can fix it. We can adapt. We can win." The sound of the P-47 is long gone from our skies, but the echo of its message remains. Never, ever underestimate the power of a good idea, a strong heart, and a 7-ton sledgehammer. So the guns fell silent. The P-47 had proven itself on every front, from the deserts of Africa to the skies over Germany. But what happens to a legend when the war it was built for ends? Does it just fade away? The story of the jug doesn't end with E-Day. In fact, its thunder was just beginning to echo across the globe. This is the story of the second life of the Thunderbolt, a journey that would see it become a mercenary, a freedom fighter, and a cold warrior, proving that a design born in one conflict could shape a dozen others. Because a tool this effective, this brutally simple, was too valuable to simply retire. It was time for the jug to go to work for the world. The year is 1946. American airfields are choked with surplus aircraft. Row upon row of B-17s, P-51s, and P-47s sit in the sun, their engines silenced, their propellers still. It's a graveyard of victory. For most, this is the end of the line. They'll be scrapped, melted down into soda cans and Chevrolets. But the Thunderbolt was different. It was so rugged, so overbuilt, that it had thousands of flying hours left in its airframe. And the world was a turbulent place. New nations were being born from the ashes of old empires, and every new air force wanted a plane that could do it all: fight, bomb, and survive. They didn't need the finesse of a Mustang. They needed a pickup truck with 8 machine guns. They needed a jug. And so began the great diaspora of the P-47. Through programs like the Military Assistance Program, hundreds of jugs were sold or given to allies across the globe. They went to Italy, Turkey, Chile, Brazil, Peru, Yugoslavia, and nationalist China. In every new air force, the Thunderbolt found a new purpose. In South America, the jugs became symbols of national power. Rival nations like Peru and Ecuador, both equipped with P-47s, would eye each other across disputed borders, their identical aircraft a reminder of a shared patron and a simmering tension. The plane was so durable that some South American air forces flew them well into the 1960s, a testament to a design that simply refused to die. But the jug's most dramatic second act was yet to come. It found its way to a fledgling nation fighting for its very existence: Israel. In 1948, the Israeli Air Force wasn't an air force. It was a collection of whatever they could get their hands on. A few smuggled-in Messerschmitts from Czechoslovakia, some old biplanes, and a handful of desperate, brilliant pilots. Many of them were volunteers, Jewish veterans from World War II, from the US, UK, and South Africa. They were called the Makel. And they needed a real fighter. They managed to get their hands on P-47s. The story of how they got them is a tale of intrigue and subterfuge, but get them they did. And when the jugs arrived in crates and were hastily assembled, they became the sledgehammer of the Israeli Air Force. The Arab forces opposing them were flying Spitfires and other late war props. They were fast, they were nimble. And they looked at the big, radial-engined P-47s and made the same mistake the Luftwaffe had made years before. They underestimated them. The Israeli pilots, many of them American veterans, knew exactly how to fly the jug. They didn't try to turn with the Spitfires. They used the same boom and zoom tactics their predecessors had perfected over Europe. They'd dive out of the sun, their .50 calibers ripping into the lighter, more fragile Spitfires, and then climb away, using their superior weight and dive speed to disengage. In one engagement, a lone Israeli P-47, piloted by an American volunteer named Lou Leonard, intercepted a formation of Egyptian C-47s that were on their way to bomb Tel Aviv. He dove into the formation, his guns blazing, and single-handedly broke up the attack, forcing the bombers to turn back. It was a Palm Sunday massacre in miniature, and it saved countless lives on the ground. The P-47, the plane that had helped defeat the Nazis, was now helping to ensure the survival of the Jewish state. It was a powerful, poetic twist in the aircraft's long history. It was no longer just an American weapon. It was a weapon of liberation. But technology waits for no one. The dawn of the jet age was undeniable. The Korean War broke out in 1950, and the sky belonged to the F-86 Sabre and the MiG-15. The day of the great, hulking propeller-driven fighter bomber was over. Almost. You see, the US Air Force had a new mission in Korea: close air support. Supporting the troops on the ground, hitting enemy positions, interdicting supply lines. The early jets were fast, but they were fuel-thirsty and couldn't loiter over the battlefield for long. They were also less stable gun platforms at low speeds. And so, in a remarkable turn of events, the US pulled its very last P-47s out of storage and sent them to Korea. Not as frontline fighters, but as dedicated ground attack planes. They were given a new designation, F-47. The F-4 fighter was a nod to its past, but its role was all about the mud. And it was brilliant at it. The Jug could carry a massive load of bombs and rockets, and it could stay over the front lines for hours, a persistent, menacing presence. Communist troops learned to fear the distinctive, deep-throated roar of the radial engine. A jet would scream past and be gone. The Jug would circle, and then when it struck, it was with the surgical, brutal precision honed over the hedgerows of Normandy. But this was its last war. By the mid-1950s, the last operational P-47s were retired from the US Air National Guard. The final flight of an American military P-47 was a quiet affair, a ferry flight to a museum or a storage yard. The era of the piston-engine fighter was officially closed. So why does the P-47 still capture our imagination? It's not the most beautiful plane. It wasn't the fastest. It didn't have the highest kill count. Its story is one of adaptation. It's about being looked down upon, written off, and then systematically, relentlessly, proving every single critic wrong. It's a story that resonates because it feels fundamentally American. It's the story of the underdog who wins not by being born a superstar, but by being tougher, smarter, and more determined than anyone else. It's the story of the mechanic with the piece of wire, the pilot who learned to fight on his own terms, the designer who believed in brute strength. The legacy of the Thunderbolt isn't just in the metal and rivets of the planes that still fly at air shows. It's in the DNA of the American military aircraft that followed. You can see the spirit of the Jug in the A-10 Warthog, another plane that was mocked for its ugliness, but revered by the troops on the ground for its toughness, its firepower, and its sheer survivability. The A-10 is the P-47's spiritual grandchild, a flying tank built around a giant gun, designed to do one thing better than anything else: support the infantry. The line is unbroken. From the P-47 to the A-10, the philosophy is the same. Build it strong. Build it simple. Build it to come home shot full of holes. And never, ever underestimate the power of a sledgehammer in a world of rapiers. The Thunderbolt story is a permanent reminder. A reminder that value isn't always on the surface. That innovation can be as simple as a piece of copper wire. And that sometimes, the greatest triumphs begin with the sound of laughter from your enemies, a laughter that is always silenced by the roar of a double Wasp engine and the devastating BRRRT of 8.50 caliber machine guns. The thunder may have faded from the skies, but the echo will never truly die. We've followed the Jug from its troubled birth to its global legacy. We've seen it crush convoys, hunt jets, and defend a new nation. But I want to take you back one last time. Back before the glory, before the aces, before the copper wire fix. Back to a single, forgotten moment in a sweltering hangar in Tunisia. This isn't a story of a battle. It's a story of a hunch. A story of the ghost in the machine, and the one man who refused to stop listening. Because for every 1,000 pilots who became legends, There were 10,000 mechanics who made those legends possible. This is the untold story of the fix, not just how it worked, but the cost of finding it. Let's return to Sergeant Ken Dahlberg. We've mythologized him a bit, haven't we? The grease monkey genius who had a eureka moment. But the reality was far grimmer, and the pressure was immense. It wasn't just one radio. It was dozens. Every day, pilots would land, their faces pale, their hands shaking. They'd climb out of their cockpits, and the first thing they'd do was slam a fist onto the fuselage. The damn radio died again. They'd look at Dahlberg and his crew not with anger, but with a desperate, fading hope. "You gotta fix it, Sarge." Benson. He never saw them coming. He couldn't hear the warning. The weight of those losses settled on Dahlberg's shoulders like a physical thing. He wasn't just troubleshooting a piece of equipment, he was trying to stop a bleeding wound in his unit. He'd lie in his cot at night, the image of a young pilot he'd shared a cigarette with that morning, now just a name on a missing in action report, burned into his mind. That silence in the air wasn't a technical fault, it was a death sentence. He tried everything. He swapped out every component. He resoldered every connection. He had other mechanics check his work. They'd bench test the radios for hours. Perfect. Every time. It was maddening. The ghost only appeared in the air. The breakthrough didn't come in a flash of inspiration. It came in a moment of exhausted, desperate empathy. Dahlberg decided he wasn't just going to fix the radio, he was going to be the radio. He needed to fly with it. He convinced a pilot, a young lieutenant named Andy, to let him ride in the back of a war-weary, two-seat P-47 used for training and hack jobs. It was against every regulation, but Andy saw the look in the sergeant's eyes and nodded. So Dahlberg strapped himself into the cramped, uncomfortable space behind the cockpit, a spare radio set on his lap, a notebook in his hand, and a gut full of fear. He wasn't a pilot. He was a ground pounder. This was alien, terrifying territory. The takeoff was a violent, rattling affair. Then the climb. Dahlberg watched his instruments, his fingers on the radio's wiring, feeling for heat, for a vibration, for anything. He had Andy switch fuel tanks. Internal. The radio worked fine. Andy's voice was clear in his headset. Switching to external now, Sarge. Silence. Not a fade. Not static. A hard, dead, absolute silence. Dahlberg's heart sank. There was the ghost. Switching back to internal, Andy called out. "You read me, Sarge?" Andy's voice was back, crystal clear. Dahlberg's mind raced. It wasn't the radio itself. It was the act of switching. It was the circuit being broken. But what circuit? He looked at the complex web of wires around him. And then he thought, not like an engineer, but like an electrician. He thought about the simplest thing. The path home. The ground. Back on the tarmac, his coveralls soaked with sweat, he didn't go to the officers. He went straight to the scrap pile. He found a length of copper wire from a destroyed generator. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't file a work order. He just did it. He scraped the paint, he wrapped the wire, he soldered the connections himself. It wasn't elegant. It was a field expedient fix, a bodge job. It was an act of faith. When Andy took that plane up again and the radio worked perfectly through the tank switch, the feeling wasn't triumph. It was relief. A deep, bone-aching relief that washed through the entire line crew. They hadn't just fixed a radio. They had given their pilots back their voice. They had given them back a fighting chance. The story of the P-47 is often told in kill ratios and sortie counts. But let's put some faces to those numbers. Let's meet a few of the men whose lives were changed by that simple wire. There was Lieutenant Robert "Bobby" Trapp, a farm kid from Iowa. Before the fix, he'd gotten separated from his flight during a messy escort mission over the Balkans. His radio was dead. He was alone, low on fuel, with flak bursting around him. He spent the most terrifying hour of his life navigating by dead reckoning and a prayer, sure he was going to end up ditching in the Adriatic or worse, in enemy territory. He made it back by sheer luck. A week after Dahlberg's fix, he was jumped by two 109s. He heard his wingman's warning shout in his headset in time to brake, and together they turned the tables, sending one 109 down in flames. That warning, that connection, saved his life. Then there was Captain Phil, not Calhoun, a flight leader. He was a natural tactician, but his plans were useless if his flight couldn't hear him. He'd come back from missions hoarse from screaming into a dead mic, furious and helpless. After the fix, he became one of the most effective leaders in the group, his calm, precise directions orchestrating complex attacks that left the Germans bewildered and broken. The fix didn't just save individual pilots, it unlocked the unit's collective intelligence. And we can't forget the ground crews themselves. The unsung heroes. Men like Corporal Salvatore Sal Marino, a kid from Brooklyn who could take apart a .50 caliber machine gun blindfolded. He saw what Dahlberg did, and it lit a fire in him. He started looking for other stupid simple fixes. He rigged up better heating for the gun bays to prevent jams in the high-altitude cold. He devised a quicker way to change the tires. This was the real legacy of the fix. It empowered everyone. It created a culture of innovation where a corporal's idea was as valuable as a colonel's. These men weren't characters in a movie. They were real. They got scared. They got lonely. They missed home. They celebrated birthdays in dusty tents. They grieved for their friends. The P-47 was their home, their office, and their weapon. And that piece of copper wire was the thread that stitched them all together, making them more than just a group of men. It made them a single, cohesive, deadly organism. The war ended. The men went home. Ken Dahlberg didn't get a medal for his fix. He got a handshake and a discharge paper. He went back to Minnesota, got a job, raised a family. He rarely talked about the war. Years later, in the 1980s, he took his grandson to the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. There, hanging from the ceiling in all its restored glory, was a P-47D Thunderbolt, painted in the checkered markings of the 325th Fighter Group. His grandson, maybe 10 years old, pointed up. "Wow, Grandpa! Look at that one! Did you ever work on those?" Dahlberg looked up at the great, barrel-shaped fuselage. His eyes, old now, traced the lines of the wings. He didn't see a museum piece. He saw a grimy, oil-stained warhorse on a dusty field in Tunisia. He felt the heat. He smelled the avgas. He heard the roar of the engine and the voice of a young lieutenant saying, "You did it, Sarge. It works." He smiled, a quiet, private smile. "Yeah," he said to his grandson, his voice soft. "Yeah, I worked on a few of those." He didn't explain about the radios. He didn't talk about the ghost in the machine or the weight of the silence. He just stood there, an old man in a museum, connected across the decades to the machine he had helped tame. In that moment, the thunder wasn't in the sky. It was a quiet, steady beat in his own chest. A memory of a problem solved, of lives saved, of a job well done. That is the true end of the story. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt is the story of Ken Dahlberg and Bobby Trapp and Sal Marino and thousands like them. It's a story that reminds us that history isn't just made by generals and aces. It's made by the stubborn, the ingenious, and the determined. It's made by those who listen for the silence and refuse to let it win.